This Saturday is UFC 310, Alexandre Pantoja versus Kai Asakura for the flyweight title, and this is going to be my full card predictions. And while it's not the most amazing main event, the card itself is relatively stacked with great fights. The co-main event, which is the people's main event, Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Machado Garry, 5 rounds, non-title co-main event. We have Ciryl Gane versus Alexander Volkov in the featured fight. On the prelims, for some reason, we have Movsar Evloev versus Aljamain Sterling. Hopefully that gets bumped to the main card, but who knows with the UFC. But we're going to go through every single fight on the card. I'm going to give you a quick breakdown and prediction. Do me a favor, guys. If you enjoy these prediction videos, make sure to like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I do these prediction videos every single week. Let's jump right into it. First fight on the card. Banger heavyweight matchup. Nzechukwu versus Łukasz Brzeski. I'm kidding when I say banger heavyweight matchup. Honestly, this is kind of a trap fight. On Tapology, everyone's picking Nzechukwu. He may very well lose to Łukasz Brzeski. Łukasz Brzeski's lost 4 out of his last 5. Got KO'd by Mick Parkin in his last fight. Last win was against Walter Walker. He was losing, and then kind of Walter Walker basically gassed out, and he kind of came back. Before that, getting KO'd by Waldo Cortez Acosta, lost to Carl Williams, lost to Martin Buday. But honestly, Nzechukwu isn't much better. He's a former light heavyweight that's up at heavyweight, just beating fat heavyweights up, essentially. He's coming off a win over Chris Barnett. What does that mean? It means absolutely nothing. Before that, he lost a split decision to the dead corpse of OSP, Ovince St. Preux. And that was only 8 months ago. Before that, lost to Dustin Jacoby, got KO'd. So listen, while I know everyone is going to pick Nzechukwu, don't be surprised if Łukasz Brzeski beats him. Łukasz Brzeski is a bigger heavyweight. He's not a huge heavyweight by any means. He has okay hands. He primarily likes to strike. His grappling is his weak point. But Nzechukwu primarily likes to strike as well. Is good in the clinch. Has decent power. Listen, what I'm picking this off of is that typically light heavyweight is more skilled than heavyweight. Heavyweight is just full of a bunch of basically fat dudes who couldn't make it in any other sport outside like the top 3, basically. So I'm going to pick Nzechukwu to get it done. Does he KO Łukasz Brzeski? I don't know. Maybe. It's hard. It's really hard to pick this fight, genuinely. I think this is a trap fight in a way. But I'm going to pick Nzechukwu. I'm going to pick him to get it done. I'm going to say second round KO. I hadn't even put in my official pick yet. Like, I hadn't decided on the method I was going on yet. But I'll pick Nzechukwu by second round KO. Listen, he's decent in the clinch. Decent knees up the middle. Łukasz Brzeski kind of has okay hands. He doesn't have, like, nuclear heavyweight power. He's not a massive heavyweight. He's bigger than Nzechukwu. Honestly, Łukasz Brzeski would probably make the cut and make it to 205. But I'm going to pick Nzechukwu. I'm going to say second round KO. Just better in the striking and faster overall. And I think he gets it done against a guy who's losing to like every heavyweight under the sun, essentially. Martin Buday and Carl Williams and Waldo Cortez Acosta. I'm picking Nzechukwu to get it done. Second round KO. Next fight on the card, we have Clay Guida versus Chase Hooper. I'll tell you this right off the jump. I'm not picking Clay Guida and his boys. I wouldn't want to kick it with Clay Guida and his boys. Clay Guida's a dead body at this point. I got to be honest. And I know people have these fond memories of Clay Guida in his prime back in the day. That was like 10 years ago, longer than 10 years. It was like 12 years ago, maybe even longer. And even then, he wasn't all that good. He was just a cardio machine who liked to wrestle. Chase Hooper is the wormiest fighter on the roster. That's the only way I can describe him. He's impossible to control. He's super flexible. I know he looks like a 12-year-old boy. Okay, I know he looks like a 12-year-old boy who would get destroyed, but I mean, last fight absolutely beat the dog shit out of Vyacheslav Borshov. Fight before that, finished Jordan Levitt. Fight before that, beat Nick Fiore. His last loss was to Steve Garcia. Steve Garcia is going on a tear right now. And honestly, I wouldn't put it past Chase Hooper to beat Steve Garcia in a rematch. And that was 2 years ago. And at his young age, he's only 25 years old. He's getting better with every single fight. Meanwhile, you have Clay Guida, who's 42 years old, almost 43. He's literally about to be 43 years old very, very shortly. He's hung around for too long. He's coming off a loss against Joaquim Silva. He's coming off a loss to Rafa Garcia. Barely beat Scott Holtzman, who literally retired afterwards. Lost to Claudio Puelles. And you have Chase Hooper, who even if he gets taken down, he's hard to control, man. He's very, very flexible and wormy on the bottom. He'll find a way to end up on top. And honestly, I see the fight playing out something along those lines. I think Chase Hooper's better on the feet, but I can see Clay Guida shooting in on a takedown, Chase Hooper maybe getting like a 70% of a guillotine, so Clay Guida has to roll to his back. Guida's not easy to submit, but he has been submitted in the past. I can see Guida like rolling to his back, giving up top position to Chase Hooper. Chase Hooper worming his way around on top and eventually finding the sub. I'm going to pick Chase Hooper. I'm going to say first round rear naked choke. Somewhere along the lines, he's going to end up on the back of Clay Guida and find a rear naked choke. Very good jiu-jitsu. Much younger. I mean, think about this age difference. I got to do math here. 17, almost 18 years youth advantage for Chase Hooper. Am I doing that math right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I am. That's crazy. That is absolutely insane. Almost 18 years youth advantage for Chase Hooper. He's much taller as well. He's literally 5 inches taller, has a 4-inch reach advantage, 18-year youth advantage. I mean, think about that. Clay Guida was kicking it with the boys in the garage at 18 years old when Chase Hooper was being pushed out of his mom's vagina. So, yeah, I'm going Chase Hooper first round sub. Next fight on the card, we have Michael Chiesa versus Max Griffin. This is actually a toss-up fight. You know, my gut instinct just immediately leans with Max Griffin because Chiesa, I looked at as a dead body. Did he beat Tony Ferguson in his last fight? Sure, but Tony Ferguson is a rotted corpse at this point. He's literally a ghost. It's the ghost of Tony Ferguson. He rear naked choked Tony Ferguson. That means absolutely nothing. Before that, lost to Kevin Holland, lost to Sean Brady, lost to Vicente Luque. Hasn't been super active. He's 37 years old. Max Griffin is 39. Max Griffin has decent defensive wrestling. I almost said defensive jiu-jitsu, but he does have decent defensive jiu-jitsu as well. Chiesa's hands. I watched Chiesa enter the UFC off The Ultimate Fighter. I believe it was The Ultimate Fighter Live, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember, I believe his dad passed away while he was filming The Ultimate Fighter. Or got very sick. I can't remember. Don't quote me on that. And he hasn't changed since. He's a guy that likes to get you down, likes to backpack you, likes to look for the rear naked choke. He just hasn't gotten any better. And he used to fight at lightweight, which is crazy for how huge he is. Max Griffin is like trading wins and losses. Split decision win over Jeremiah Wells in his last fight. I think Jeremiah Wells is in a better spot than Michael Chiesa and has very good grappling. And is probably stronger, but doesn't have as good of jiu-jitsu as Michael Chiesa. Here's how I think it's going to go down. I think Max Griffin's going to avoid the takedown. I think the striking heavily favors Griffin on the feet. Not that Griffin is some world-class striker, but Chiesa just circles and his striking looks like garbage and always has. And I think Griffin basically wins kind of a boring decision, just kind of touching up Chiesa from the outside. I could even see him maybe clipping Chiesa. If Chiesa starts to get desperate, spamming takedowns, maybe Max Griffin, unless Max Griffin's coach is Tim Welch. And Max Griffin never heard of a double leg. Maybe then we could see Chiesa drag him to the ground and sub him. But I'm going to pick Max Griffin to get it done. I think he's just going to circle around the cage. He's the better striker. Unless Chiesa can drag him to the ground and get his back, I don't see that's the only avenue to victory for Chiesa. I don't see him winning a decision unless it's with the grappling. But if Chiesa wins, most likely he probably gets a sub. And his career lately just hasn't been good. Okay, he beat Tony Ferguson. I would take Max Griffin over 2 Tony Fergusons at once in his current state. He lost to Kevin Holland, got darsed by Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland, I don't even consider that good. He gets overhyped. So I'm picking Max Griffin via decision. I'm going to say like a 29-28 decision. Maybe 1 round's close on the feet and Chiesa gets some control time and maybe a takedown for a minute or so and limited damage and maybe ekes out a round. But I'm going to pick Max Griffin via decision. Next fight on the card, we have Cody Durden versus Joshua Van. This is a trap fight. There's a lot of fights on this card that I feel like are almost trap fights. Joshua Van is a very, very highly touted young prospect who has excellent boxing, is really, really active on the feet, has good pressure, has good knockout power. But Cody Durden is super well-rounded. Good striking. It's not as good as Joshua Van's, but he mixes in the grappling and the wrestling, and he's pretty strong in the clinch and has good takedowns as well. But Joshua Van, I've never really seen him exposed on the ground. His only loss in the UFC is against Charles Johnson in a competitive fight where he got KO'd in the 3rd round. And rewatching that fight, he was doing decent. He wasn't like getting destroyed. And Charles Johnson, I think, is underrated even going in that fight. Then he has that war with Edgar Chairez and gets it done there. Fight before that was against Felipe Bunes, who did get him down, I think, twice, if I'm not mistaken. But Joshua Van was able to scramble out. And Bunes has really good jiu-jitsu, maybe even better jiu-jitsu than Durden. So I think if Cody Durden wins this fight, it's going to have to be with the grappling. And I don't know if his grappling is going to be good enough. Van is just so young. He's athletic. He's fast. He has good footwork. And one thing I see being a huge factor in this fight is the body shots of Joshua Van. If you don't watch every single fight. You should know, or you shouldn't know. I guess you don't know, is what I was trying to get to there. A real good deterrent to stuff takedowns is just mixing in body shots nonstop, because they change their level and they don't want to get clipped by those body shots. Or whether it be, just kind of ripping to the body like Joshua Van does, or a knee up the middle to the body. And I see Joshua Van using his body shots kind of as a deterrent for the takedowns of Durden. And I think on the feet, unless Van is terrified of getting taken down and controlled, he's the much superior striker. So I'm going to pick Joshua Van to get it done over Cody Durden. But I do think Cody Durden is like a sleeper pick. He beat Match Now in his last fight, submitted him on short notice, might I add. Before that, got KO'd by Bruno Silva in a fight he was winning. I actually picked against him in that fight. I picked Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva with a crazy comeback KO. Before that, got subbed by Tagir Ulanbekov, who's a very good fighter and has very good jiu-jitsu. Joshua Van doesn't have the jiu-jitsu to make Durden pay for the sloppy shots. So, I think Van is much better than a Jake Hadley or a Matt Schnell, so I'm picking Joshua Van to get it done. I say he just boxes him up to a decision. I could even see him getting like a third-round TKO, because Van does build as the fight goes on. You'll see him, I think it was against Kevin Borjas, if I'm not mistaken. He was kind of losing early, kind of getting outstruck early, and then he just picks up the pace, starts ripping to the body, and started beating Kevin Borjas. I believe he lost the first round, then won the second and third. So I could see maybe Durden having a decent first round, Van kind of building a comeback. But also, Van's 10 years younger. That's insane. A youth advantage, especially that significant, cannot be ignored. I'm picking Joshua Van to get it done via decision. Next fight on the card, we have a rescheduled bout from UFC 309, Chris Weidman versus Eryk Anders. Listen, the fight was originally scheduled at UFC 309 and it was canceled. It was all Chris Weidman's fault. It was not Eryk Anders' fault. It was not the UFC's fault. It was all Chris Weidman's fault. It was 100% his fault that the fight got canceled. It was his fault. It was Weidman's fault that it got canceled. I'm being sarcastic here, because Weidman was at no fault for the fight cancellation, but he was. Eryk Anders got sick. The fight got canceled. UFC couldn't find a replacement on such short notice, so they rebooked it. The reason I'm saying it's Weidman's fault is because Weidman's only win in the last 4 years was against Bruno Silva, where he brutally eye-poked him 17 times, and then afterwards, he celebrated like he won the world title. And he blamed Bruno Silva for getting eye-poked and reacting to the eye-pokes. So I'm glad Chris Weidman didn't get paid for 309, and I'm hoping he pays for it even more at UFC 310 against Eryk Anders. And I already broke down this fight once, so I'm not going to go in too much detail. Listen, I thought Chris Weidman was a dead body years ago. Then he broke his leg, and he looked like shit in his return against Brad Tavares. He didn't look great against Bruno Silva, who's a shell of his former self in his own right. Chris Weidman's 40 years old. Even when he was like closer to his prime, he's getting KO'd by everyone left and right. Yoel Romero, Dominick Reyes, Gegard Mousasi, Jacare Souza. I think those all were in a row. Then he breaks his leg against Uriah Hall. Yeah, I'm not picking him to get it done. Eryk Anders is mildly athletic, has decent striking, decent wrestling. Weidman is known for his wrestling and his jiu-jitsu. I don't think it's that good, especially out of his prime, post a brutal, horrible broken leg against Uriah Hall. It's at a catch weight, I guess, because it got rescheduled. They didn't want to have to catch weight again. They didn't want to have to cut weight again. It's at 195, so it's not technically a middleweight bout. I'm picking Eryk Anders to sleep him. I think Eryk Anders isn't great, decision against Jamie Pickett. I think Chris Weidman's about on the same level as Jamie Pickett. Now, if Chris Weidman lands at least 2 eye pokes, I officially change my pick to Chris Weidman. So keep an eye out for that. 2 eye pokes without a point deduction. Chris Weidman wins the fight. But I'm going Eryk Anders to sleep him in the second round. I think Weidman's a shell of his former self. I think he was overrated even when he was the champion. And if Anderson Silva doesn't showboat in that first fight, maybe Weidman's never even a middleweight champion. So I'm picking Eryk Anders, brutal second round KO after shaking off some takedowns in the first round from Weidman. Next fight on the card, we have Randy Brown versus Bryan Battle. Excellent matchmaking by the UFC. And this is where you really see some stacked prelims start to come in. This is a very, very tough fight to pick. And ultimately, I feel like it could go either way. Randy Brown, Randy Brown is really, really good everywhere, but primarily likes to keep it standing, is kind of a rangy boxer. But where I think he loses this fight is he doesn't really do well with heavy pressure, and Bryan Battle has really good pressure. If this is a kind of technical fight, fought at a slower pace, Randy Brown probably wins. But Bryan Battle is going to get in his face and pressure him nonstop like he has in the past. He did it against Kevin Jousset, wore him out, and TKO'd him. Fight before that was beating the dog shit out of Ange Lusa, and then he quit because of an eye poke. Fight before that, kind of was in a dog fight a little bit with AJ Fletcher, submitted him. Before that, KO'd Gabe Green. Gabe Green came out and like a bat out of hell and got slept. His only loss is to Renat Fakhretdinov in the UFC. And Renat has amazing grappling. So Bryan Battle, I think he's super well-rounded. I think Randy Brown has kind of been the same forever. He's 34 years old, hasn't evolved that much. Okay, he's got to win against Elazar Zaleski dos Santos. Elazar Zaleski dos Santos was mixing in the grappling and landing good shots on the feet. Before that, he beat Muslim Salihov. That was a good KO. Before that, Wellington Turman, close fight. It wasn't that close, but Wellington Turman was able to mix in some grappling. Lost to Jack Della Maddalena and got submitted. I think Bryan Battle is the more well-rounded mixed martial artist, can mix in the grappling. I don't think he's going to be able to control Brown extensively, like hold him down for long periods of time. But I think really the pressure of Battle, like you'll see Brown probably pumping the jab a bit and trying to move away. Battle's just going to keep walking him down and landing big shots. And I think eventually as Randy Brown slows down, I think Bryan Battle's going to clip him and put him away. I'm going to pick Bryan Battle. I thought about picking him via decision. I'm going to pick him via third round TKO. I think unless this fight is like super clean, Bryan Battle has pretty solid power. And I can see him dropping Randy Brown and then putting him away with ground and pound, especially as the fight goes on. Bryan Battle has very good cardio. Even when Renat was ragdolling him and just beating the piss out of him on the ground, he still had decent cardio in that fight. His cardio still held up. And, his pressure, I really think, you look at some of Randy Brown's fights, particularly the Elazar Zaleski fight in his last fight, when Zaleski was pressuring is when he was having his most success. Bryan Battle loves the pressure, loves to get in your face, loves to throw, long combinations. We're talking 3-4 punch combinations. Randy Brown likes to kind of pump the jab, throw a straight right hand and kind of move away and use his footwork and stick and move. I think Battle makes this kind of a dirty, ugly fight. And I think Battle slumps him in the third round, drops him, pressures him against the fence, lands a big shot, hurts him bad, drops him, and then finishes him with ground and pound. I'm going Bryan Battle, third round TKO. Next fight on the card. How is this a prelim? Movsar Evloev versus Aljamain Sterling. This could arguably be a number one contender fight in the featherweight division. If Movsar wins, it should be a number one contender fight, if we're being honest. And somehow this is on the prelims. I don't know what the UFC is doing. I know they don't like Aljamain Sterling, but come on now. Listen, I love this matchup. I think it's a great fight, but I think this matchup shows how much the UFC absolutely despises Aljamain Sterling. Movsar Evloev is a nightmare matchup for Aljo. Now, I thought Aljo was going to lose to Calvin Kattar just because we never really seen Calvin Kattar out-grappled, but Calvin Kattar never really fought a grappler, the caliber of Aljamain Sterling, who tried to implement that game plan against him. And Aljamain Sterling was able to go out there with the increased weight. He put weight on. He looked good at 45 and was able to ragdoll him. That's not happening against Movsar. Movsar has incredible grappling, was able to out-grapple Arnold Allen, who's really good defensively. And Movsar, I don't see where Aljo wins this fight. Movsar's striking is improving every single fight. He's coming off a win over Arnold Allen where he hurt him with a jab. I think it was in the second round. Fight before that, he dominated Diego Lopez on short notice. I know everyone likes to elevate Diego Lopez. Oh, he was competitive with Evloev and he threw up some submissions in the fight. Movsar ragdolled him, controlled him, and beat him up on the ground. Did Lopez have some moments where it looked like maybe he was close to a submission? Yes, but outside of that, he got dominated. Movsar's undefeated, 18-0. Was out striking Dan Ige on the feet. Aljo's striking is trash. If he can't grapple, he's screwed, and I don't think he can out-grapple Movsar Evloev. I think this is a nightmare matchup for him. Movsar, I believe, is the only guy at featherweight that could beat Ilia Topuria. I'm not saying I would pick him, but I think he's the only guy that could beat Ilia Topuria. And so Aljo's supposed to out-grapple this guy, especially considering Evloev, improved his hands. And everyone thinks of, Aljamain Sterling out-grappled Petr Yan. In the first fight, Petr Yan was ragdolling Aljo before he got DQ'd. Even in the second fight, Yan made the mistake in the second and third round of giving up his back, and Aljo just hung on to it and did damage. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he didn't do damage, but people forget the fourth and fifth round when Yan didn't make that mistake and turn his back. He was ragdolling Sterling in the grappling. So I see Movsar Evloev beating him up on the feet. When Sterling does initiate the grappling, I could see Evloev just ragdolling him in the grappling. I see Evloev mixing in the grappling. And unless Aljamain Sterling finds moments in rounds where somehow he snatches up the back and locks up a body triangle, I don't see a way that he can win this fight. Let me see what 33% are picking Aljamain Sterling on Tapology. I don't see it. I really don't see it. I could see Movsar KOing him. Matter of fact, I might pick Movsar to KO him. Movsar has good hands. He's due for a finish. He's 18-0. His last few fights, I don't think he's gotten a finish in the UFC. People act like he's boring. He's not boring. Aljo's coming off a win against Calvin Kattar. Calvin Kattar's nowhere near the caliber of fighter that Movsar Evloev is. Before that, got KO'd by Sean O'Malley. Okay, maybe that was a fluke. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe he got rushed. Whatever. He's 35 years old. His striking has always been piss. It's not going to improve with this training camp. He's already, building in excuses by saying Evloev's on PEDs. I'm picking Movsar Evloev to get it done. I'm going to say he's going to slump him. This is going to be a crazy pick. I'm picking Movsar Evloev by TKO. Actually, brutal KO. Movsar slumps him in the second round. Movsar's already out grappling him. Sterling overextends on shots, looking sloppy like he did against Marlon Moraes, and gets brutally slept. I see Movsar getting a statement win here, and people still find a way to discredit it somehow because he's from the Caucasus region. But yeah, I'm picking Movsar Evloev. I'm going to say second round KO against Aljamain Sterling. Sterling, once he realizes the grappling isn't working, he's going to try to find some success with the kicks. He overextends. He leaves himself open to counter shots. And I think a guy like Evloev is going to make him pay for it, whose boxing is improving. Again, he outboxed Danny Gay. So I'm picking Movsar Evloev. I'm going to say late second round KO. Catches Sterling out of place, slumps him, and puts him down and gets a win and stakes his claim to being number one contender, and should be next in line for the title after Alexander Volkanovski gets his rematch. So I'm going Evloev second round TKO. Next fight on the card, we have Vicente Luque versus Themba Gorimbo. Look, another day, another year. Maybe I pick Vicente Luque, but he's a dead body. Ever since that Jeff Neal loss 2 years, 3 months ago, apparently. That's crazy. He hasn't been the same. He suffered a brain hemorrhage. He comes back. He beats Dos Anjos with grappling. Then against Joaquin Buckley, he straight up quit. It looked like it was rigged. I don't trust him to get a win. Maybe against Nick Diaz. I probably would have picked him against Nick Diaz. That was the original fight. Against Themba Gorimbo, who I'm not even that high on, to be honest. Gets way too much clout because, he's somewhat friends with The Rock. Whatever. Which people keep saying The Rock bought him that house. I don't even believe The Rock bought him that house. I believe he rented it out for him long term. That's what I think happened. We don't really know for sure. But that's besides the point. Themba Gorimbo's beaten Nico Price, Ramiz Brahima. Pete Rodriguez is the last guy he KO'd. His last loss is to AJ Fletcher. That was 2 years ago. He's 33 years old. He has good grappling. He has decent hands, decent power. Hands aren't that great. Pre-Jeff Neal, I think Vicente Luque washes him. But after the Jeff Neal fight, how can you pick Vicente Luque? He literally curled up into a ball and quit against Buckley. It was the first time in a long time I felt like a fight was just rigged. Like, did Luque bet against himself? But I just think he doesn't want to take the damage. He's worried, and I don't blame him. So I don't like that Gorimbo's stepping in on short notice. Maybe Luque can find him in a bad spot. Luque does have a sneaky Darce choke. He caught, Tyron Woodley in it. Michael Chiesa in it, I believe, as well. But I'm not picking Luque. The silent assassin, I think he's washed up. I think he's a dead body. I think he's worried about getting clunked on the chin, and he's one big shot. He's gonna curl up into a ball. Please, I got a family. So I'm picking Themba Gorimbo. I'm gonna pick him to get it done. How am I gonna pick him to get it done? I'm gonna pick Gorimbo to KO. I'm gonna say first round KO. I think Luque is like one fight away from retirement. I think this probably sends him into retirement. He either has a resurgence here and beats Gorimbo, or he's done for. He loses to Gorimbo, it's the end of Vicente Luque as we know it. Buckley isn't a horrible loss. So maybe Luque recalibrated, talk to a psychologist of some sort, and is going to be able to make his way back. I doubt it. I think Themba Gorimbo is going to slump him in the first round, even though I don't think Gorimbo's all that good. I really don't think he's that good, but I'm going to pick him to get it done. Taller, 1 inch taller, 1 inch reach advantage for Gorimbo. Plus, he's not worried about taking shots. Hasn't taken a lot of damage in his career. I think he puts Vicente Luque out in the first round. Next fight on the card, the featured prelim as it stands right now. We have Anthony Smith versus Dominick Reyes. Dead body versus dead body. But you know what? Dominick Reyes in his last fight showed he had a pulse. He went out there and brutally chinned Dustin Jacoby. He showed some athleticism. He showed some power. Before that, man, he's just getting chinned. He got chinned by Ryan Spann, got chinned by Yuri Prohaska, got chinned by Jan Blachowicz, lost to John Jones, the John Jones curse. After that, 3 straight losses, all by brutal finish. I mean, what Jan did to him 4 years ago when he beat up the body was incredible. But he did come back. He finally got a win. You could see that he was kind of relieved after finally getting a win against Dustin Jacoby. Anthony Smith, just trading wins and losses and I don't remember, when's the last time Anthony Smith looked good? He didn't even look good against Vitor Petrino, to be honest. I know he got a quick sub, but Vitor Petrino was winning on the feet, shot on a lazy takedown, got subbed in a guillotine. Lost to Roman Dolidze. Dolidze came in on short notice and didn't even look good. Dolidze's not that good. His last loss before that got brutally chinned by Khalil Roundtree, ended up doing a spinner-Rooney in the middle of the cage. Beat Ryan Spann by split decision. Ryan Spann has no cardio, looked like garbage. And before that, lost to Johnny Walker. He's 36 years old. I don't think Anthony Smith should be fighting anymore. He has 20 losses. 20 professional losses. He's 37-20. I think this is a no-brainer. Anthony Smith looks sluggish on the feet, stuck in the mud. That term was created for Anthony Smith. Does he have good heart? Yes. But not really. Not anymore. Not anymore. Used to when he fought Volkan Ozdemir way back in the day. He did against John Jones when he could have had the DQ, but I remember, I think it was TJ Dillashaw said, why is he lying hard? He curls up into a ball. He just quits. He basically quit against Elidze. Didn't do anything. Quit against Magomed Ankalaev. There's so many fights where he just looks like garbage. Quit against Johnny Walker. There was a moment in the, I think it was the second round of the Johnny Walker fight, where he just curled up into a ball and just got beat up. I think Dominick Reyes is going to get a win here. I think this is more a dead body versus faint pulse. Somebody's putting that machine right now, the defibrillator, right on Dominick Reyes. He's got a very faint pulse. I'm about to say, clear. and that's what I think. I think Dominick Reyes is going to get it done. I think he chins Anthony Smith. We're going to get back-to-back KO wins for Dominick Reyes. Anthony Smith sluggish on the feet. I don't think he's imposing his grappling on Dominick Reyes, who's a bigger fighter. It's at light heavyweight. He's not, Roman Dolidze, a former middleweight, was able to just beat up Anthony Smith and take him down. So I think Dominick Reyes can mix in his grappling if he needs to. Dominick Reyes gets it done and maybe crawls his way out of a body bag at this point. Somehow, some way, didn't think it would happen. But I'm going Dominick Reyes second round KO. Picture perfect straight right hand, slumps Anthony Smith and puts a stamp on the end of Anthony Smith's career. Next fight on the card, we have the main card opener. Nate Landwehr versus Du Hoi Choi. Why is this the main card opener? This isn't even the worst fight on the main card, if we're being honest. But this makes no sense that it's the main card opener. But listen, Du Hoi Choi is coming off a win over Bill Algeo, where he got a KO, where Bill Algeo kind of quit. He looked okay in that fight, but he was coming back off a 2-year layoff against Kyle Nelson. A fight he was winning, and then he had a point deducted, so it ended up being a majority decision draw, I believe. And then before that, got KO'd by Charles Jourdain, but that's 5 years ago. Before that, got KO'd by Jeremy Stephens. That's almost 7 years ago. Before that, got KO'd or got beat by Cub Swanson. And that was his claim to fame, was that crazy fight against Cub Swanson. Nate Landwehr is a dog. He is a dog. He's coming off a win over Jamal Emmers, who's a very quality opponent. Before that, lost to Dan Ige in a competitive fight. Before that, beat Austin Lingo, who's like a dollar store version of Nate Landwehr. Before that, beat David Onamo. We need Nate Landwehr versus Bryce Mitchell. That'd be a hilarious fight. But yeah, listen, Du Hoi Choi definitely has the striking advantage, but I don't think it's that crazy significant. And I also think Nate Landwehr has the grappling advantage. And I just think Nate Landwehr is just such a dog. He's not easy to finish by any means. And I just think he's going to go out there and beat Du Hoi Choi. I think he's going to beat him. I think Du Hoi Choi is going to get tired. He's going to get exhausted. He's going to get taken down. He's going to get grinded into the mat. He's going to get beaten up with ground and pound. And I think Nate Landwehr is going to get it done. I'm going to pick Nate Landwehr to get it done. I'm going to say third round TKO. I just don't see this being a clean fight. And that's kind of how this fight has to be for Du Hoi Choi to get it done. A clean fight, or maybe he finds a nice clean shot on the feet and slumps Nate Landwehr. Nate Landwehr is super durable. He's super durable. So I don't see him getting put out. I see Du Hoi Choi having some success on the feet, but it doesn't matter because Nate Landwehr is going to walk right through it. Start barking at him maybe. Shout out Anshul Jubilee. Who was barking at Anshul Jubilee? I don't even remember off the top of my head. Mike Breeden? Was it Mike Breeden? I just see Nate Landwehr walking through the big shots of Du Hoi Choi, mixing in the grappling, mixing in the clinch. I see Du Hoi Choi getting busted up on the feet, bloodied and battered. Nate Landwehr is going to eat some shots. He's going to have some swelling and some blood dripping down his face as well. And I just see Nate Landwehr out-dogging Du Hoi Choi. I'm picking Nate Landwehr to get it done. I'm going to say third round TKO. Next fight on the card. Why is this on the main card? Bryce Mitchell versus Kron Gracie. Why is Kron Gracie on the main card? Better yet, why is Kron Gracie even in the UFC? This dude doesn't even belong in the UFC. Lost to Charles Jourdain. Butt scoots galore in his last fight. Fight before that, butt scoots galore against Cub Swanson. And that was 5 years ago. He's fought one fight in like the last 5 years. 2 fights in the last 5 years. His only recent win is 6 years ago against Alex Caceres. And that's his only win in the UFC. He's 36 years old. This is kind of an interesting matchup because Kron Gracie is a jiu-jitsu specialist who has good submission ability. But is he going to sub Bryce off his back? Is Bryce going to take him to the ground? I think Bryce can take him to the ground and avoid the sub, but I think Bryce is just probably going to outstrike him, and I think maybe that's why the UFC made this matchup. I swear on my life, I would outstrike Kron Gracie right now. That's how bad his striking is. But he has submission ability, but Bryce has good jiu-jitsu. Bryce is known for his jiu-jitsu. He's coming off a loss against Josh Emmett. Okay, he could have even took his chin. Yeah, but Kron Gracie's going to KO him. Kron Gracie's going to KO him? Yeah, right. That's not going to happen. He took a year off. Beat Dan Ige, which I actually thought he lost, but competitive fight. Lost to Ilia Topuria, no shame in that. Beat Edson Barboza, which is grappling. Who's picking Kron Gracie? Let me actually look. Yeah, 95% are picking Bryce Mitchell. Kron Gracie would have to get like a Hail Mary submission on the ground. Bryce Mitchell is low IQ, so maybe somehow he dives into a triangle choke or something along those lines. But I see Bryce picking his spots on the ground. I see him battering him on the feet. I see him really working the clinch as well to avoid the submissions and just being extra cautious on the ground. I'm picking Bryce Mitchell to get it done. I could see him TKOing him. Honestly, I should probably pick him via TKO. I'm just going to pick him via decision. I'm going to pick Bryce to mainly strike to a decision, mixing the takedowns but not really stay down there. I think Kron Gracie's going to pull guard multiple times. But I think Bryce Mitchell, this should be the end of Kron Gracie. Bryce Mitchell should send him back to maybe like on the corner panhandling or something along those lines. There's not really much to break down here. Basically, Kron Gracie can find a sub off his back. Probably not going to happen. Bryce has good jiu-jitsu, better striking, good cardio, not going to fade and make a mistake where Kron Gracie's going to, drag his ass on the carpet like a dog trying to get rid of a dingleberry. And that's going to be the majority of the fight. So maybe Bryce makes a crucial mistake and puts himself in a bad spot on the ground, but I don't even think that's going to happen. So I'm picking Bryce Mitchell. I'm going to say via decision, gets it done via decision over Kron Gracie. Hopefully this gets moved to the prelims and we get Aljamain Sterling versus Movsar Evloev on the main card. Next fight on the card, the featured fight on the card. This is where the card really starts to get good. We have Ciryl Gane versus Alexander Volkov 2. Now they fought a long while ago. I believe it was back in 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And Ciryl Gane just battered him to a decision. And I'm trying to remember. Something just popped into my mind. Somebody on this card, was it Bryce Mitchell? Let me actually take a look. Of course, it's not working. Somebody on this card, and I want to say it was the Bryce Mitchell fight, but maybe I'm mistaken. Somebody grappled someone previously and was submitted. Who was it? Maybe I'm mistaken this for another. Oh, it was Clay Guida, Chase Hooper. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Let me just add this in real quick. Clay Guida and Chase Hooper had a grappling match fairly recently. I don't know why this just popped in my head. Yeah, December 30th, 2022, and Chase Hooper subbed him. So that's another reason I'm picking Chase Hooper. Okay, now let's get back to what we were talking about. Featured fight on the card, Ciryl Gane versus Alexander Volkov 2. Ciryl Gane outstruck Volkov to a decision back in, I believe it was 2021. And then since then, Volkov has gone on a decent streak. I mean, he lost to Tom Aspinall, no shame in that. Got straight armbarred in the first round, I believe it was, which is super impressive. Then he's reeled off some decent wins. TKO'd Jorginho Rosenstrike. TKO'd Alexander Romanov, not a really good win. Submitted Tai Tuivasa, not a great win. And decision win over Sergey Pavlovich in his last fight. Ciryl Gane has 2 losses since then, but they're not horrible losses, and they're the only 2 losses he has. He lost to Francis Ngannou in a fight that was very close, and lost to John Jones where he got submitted in the first round. And then since then, when it came back and KO'd Sergey Spivak. Listen, Alexander Volkov has gotten significantly better since their first fight, but is it good enough to outstrike Ciryl Gane? Basically, the first fight was Ciryl Gane just being cleaner on the feet. Volkov, I think he's a little bit too sluggish. I think he's just a little bit too sluggish. I think he definitely has a path to victory. I think his striking has improved. I don't think Gane's going to mix in the grappling where Volkov has shown a vulnerability in the past, like against Curtis Blades and Tom Aspinall. I don't think Gane's going to mix in the grappling, even though I think he does have some decent grappling. But we've seen him only use that against very low-level guys. I don't know if he can use it against Volkov as effectively. And basically, I see this fight playing out primarily striking. Neither guy has like crazy KO power. Neither guy is like super wide open for big power shots. Neither guy has unbelievable nuclear power. And so I see this fight kind of playing out how the first fight played out. Gane just landing the better shots. I see Volkov trying to batter that inside leg kick like he always uses. Trying to use, his reach advantage to really batter Ciryl Gane from range. But you know what's crazy? He doesn't have a reach advantage. I thought he did have a reach advantage. Ciryl Gane has a 1-inch reach advantage over Alexander Volkov. Volkov is 3 inches taller. So doesn't even have a reach advantage. Is much slower, less athletic. When you're 6'7", you're just kind of sluggish. You know, even Volkov, who's a very good heavyweight, who I think is above like the bums at heavyweight, he's just a little bit more sluggish. At 6'7", you're getting into that range where you're just kind of lanky and kind of clumsy a bit. And I just don't, you know, he went out there and outstruck Sergey Pavlovich. So would Ciryl Gane. Ciryl Gane would have beat up Sergey Pavlovich, would have outstruck him with technique. And I just think in this fight, I think Ciryl Gane's going to be bouncing on the balls of his feet, pumping the jab, landing good combinations. I think Volkov will have some success, kicking to the body, kicking to the legs, landing upstairs. But I think Ciryl Gane is just going to be more effective, land more power shots, get out of the way. He has very good head movement, and just I think it's really the athleticism of Ciryl Gane that gets it done for him in this fight. So I'm going to pick Ciryl Gane to get it done via decision. I just think it's going to be a repeat of the first fight, even though Volkov has gotten better. So maybe it's a little bit closer than the first fight. I don't remember what the scorecards were, but Ciryl Gane was well out ahead. It was a clear win for him, maybe even 5-0, but I'm not 100% sure. It could have been 4-1. And I really think it's going to be kind of a rinse repeat. Gane is just too athletic, man. He's kind of a new breed of heavyweight. And if you don't have the wrestling to expose his wrestling, Francis Ngannou and John Jones do, you're not beating him. I don't think you're beating him. So that's why the Tom Aspinall fight in the future could be very interesting, because Tom could expose the grappling deficiencies. But Volkov's not going to do that. Volkov's just going to stand in front of him and try to trade. I think Gane gets in and out quicker, has a 1-inch reach advantage despite being 3 inches shorter. And I think Ciryl Gane gets it done via decision and beats Alexander Volkov in the rematch. This was a fight that was supposed to happen at 308. It got moved. I don't really think that's going to have any effect on the fight at all. But they've been training for each other for ages at this point. But I'm picking Ciryl Gane to get it done. Next fight on the card, the people's main event, the co-main event of UFC 310. We have a 5-round welterweight matchup. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Machado Garry. Undefeated versus undefeated. 18-0 Shavkat Rakhmonov. 18-0, nothing but finishes. Then we have Ian Machado Garry, 15-0. This fight was thrown together on short notice. The original main event of this card, in case you don't know, was Shavkat getting a title shot against UFC welterweight champion Belal Muhammad. Belal Muhammad had a bone infection. He pulled out. They wanted to bolster the card. They kept Shavkat on the card. Shavkat has been kind of inactive. I think he suffered some injuries last year or earlier this year. He wanted to stay active. He wanted to stay on the card. So they said, you know what? Let's call the only person that'll probably take the fight, the alpha male Ian Machado Garry. Nobody else would take this fight against Shavkat. Shavkat is the boogeyman of the division. Now, this fight is actually very, very difficult to pick. I know everybody thinks Shavkat Rakhmonov's going to win this fight. And I don't think that's a bad pick by any means. I really don't. But I think they're vastly underestimating the skill of Ian Machado Garry just because they don't like Ian Machado Garry. I think Garry, in a way, is kind of a nightmare matchup for Shavkat. Now, Shavkat is a nightmare matchup for everyone. Don't get me wrong. This dude loves to go to war. He's constantly looking for a finish. 18 finishes, regardless of opposition, is absolutely insane. But what this fight really comes down to, and I'm looking on Tapology right now, negative 350 favorite for Shavkat. That's insanity, in my opinion. I think this is way closer to a 50-50 fight than people are making it out to be. But what I think this fight comes down to is, can Shavkat control Ian Garry in the clinch? And can Shavkat work the grappling and get Garry to the ground? At least enough to have Garry thinking about it on the feet, where Garry kind of freezes up on the feet because he's worried about the takedown. And then also, we've never seen either one of these guys go 5 rounds. We've seen Shavkat go a hard 3 rounds against Jeff Neal, where at the end of the 3rd round, like last 30 seconds, get a finish, where he started to kind of wear down a bit in that fight. Herb Dean was being so annoying in that fight, by the way. They're going to war, and Herb, like, they clinch up for 5 seconds, Herb's clapping. I just watched that fight like an hour ago. And then you have Ian Machado Garry, who has faced some adversity in his UFC career. Got dropped by Kenan Song, came back and got a KO. He KO'd Daniel Rodriguez, but then since then, not the most impressive wins in terms of, getting finishes or crazy exciting performance, but he beat the crap out of Neil Magny, destroyed Neil Magny, and it seemed like he was making that fight go long. And the leg kick's unbelievable. Then he beats Jeff Neal, didn't really get touched by Jeff Neal. It's an opponent in common with Shavkat. Shavkat went to war with him. Now, granted, Shavkat had to deal with an overweight Jeff Neal. And then Michael Venom Page. People criticize this performance, MVP is very, very tricky on the feet. And people say Gary was scared shitless on the feet of MVP. That's not what he was doing, okay? I just rewatched that fight earlier today, and I broke this down in the past. MVP relies a lot on his movement and feints to kind of get you out of position. Gary just wasn't reacting to it. He was just being super defensively responsible and mixing in the grappling. Should have had the first round rear naked choke, kind of fumbled that a bit. That performance would have been way more impressive had he found that rear naked choke. But I really think it comes down to grappler versus striker here. And I know Shavkat's not just a grappler. He's super well-rounded and likes to go to war. But can he get Gary down? And people don't realize, and I broke this down going into the MVP fight, everyone was like, MVP is going to easily outstrike Gary. And I'm like, Gary's a grappler. Gary, previous to the UFC, was primarily a grappler. He was going out there taking guys down and subbing them. And while I don't think his grappling is on par with Shavkat, it might be just good enough. And I think a lot of people are doing a bit of MMA math, but I think, you can justify it. You can kind of twist it and turn it and justify it in any way you want. Like, for example, people can say, well, Shavkat fought Jeff Neal and he finished Jeff Neal, and Gary fought Jeff Neal and it was a boring fight and he only won a decision. Yeah, but you can also twist that and say, yeah, Shavkat went to war with Jeff Neal. I just said that, which is true. He went to war with him. He went to war with Jeff Neal. Ian Machado Garry didn't get touched by Jeff Neal. You see what I'm saying? And then in his last fight against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, struggled with the takedown in the first round, was struggling with the takedown in the second round, but then Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, while they're kind of out in the open, like a foot or two away from the cage, Shavkat kind of pulled him away from the cage and was looking for a single leg. Wonderboy starts jumping in the air repeatedly and then gets taken down and ends up getting subbed in the last 30 seconds. I think Gary's a better grappler than a lot of these guys. Jeff Neal didn't get taken down. Jeff Neal was even doing well in the clinch. Now, granted, again, he was overweight, but Jeff Neal landing good shots on the feet, even rocked Shavkat, and I believe it was in the third round. That's where Herb Dean was like clapping nonstop, incessantly. It was so annoying. Worst reffing performance I've ever seen. Look, I think this is a very, very close fight. I can see this fight going either way. It is a 5-round fight. But ultimately, who am I picking? I've been struggling with this pick for a bit. And I know, people are going to say, Joey, you joke around. You say you're the president of the Ian Machado Garry fan club. If you pick him, you're biased. That is why... No. I was going to say that's why I'm going with Shavkat Rakhmonov. I'm going with Ian Machado Garry. And here's why I'm going with Ian Machado Garry. Ian Machado Garry is very good everywhere, has a super high fight IQ, is good in the clinch. And I think unless Shavkat can bully him in the grappling, I think Garry has a massive advantage on the feet. Where this fight is going to get really compelling is how do both of their cardios match up in those later rounds. Because I don't think Shavkat's finishing him early. Now, Shavkat's very dynamic on the feet, loves to throw that spinning wheel kick to the body to set up the spinning wheel kick to the head. Could he find one of those kill shots on Garry on the feet? Sure. But I think Shavkat's going to be trying to grapple. And if he's having trouble early taking down Wonderboy, I think Gary's grappling defense is much better, in my opinion. I think he's going to be more prepared. I mean, Wonderboy Thompson just gets scared at the sight of a middle school wrestling singlet. Okay? I think Garry is the much crisper, more accurate technical striker. Does Shavkat, is he more dynamic? Does he have more finishing ability and finishing potential? Yes. But I think Gary's going to come into this fight and he has a bit of a chip on his shoulder, A lot of people criticize and hate on Garry, and Gary's going to come in here and he's going to know, I took the fight against the boogeyman of the welterweight division, and I'm going to go out there and put on a performance of a lifetime. And I talked about this when I picked Bilal to beat Leon Edwards, and everyone laughed at me, okay? I think Gary's going to go out there and stick and move against Shavkat. I think he's going to touch him up on the chin. I think it's going to be an outright war because Shavkat's going to be walking him down. But I think Garry is going to take less damage. And I think unless Shavkat can ragdoll him to the ground, and granted, also Shavkat he had a foot injury going into that Wonderboy fight, so we also have to take that into account. And what we also have to take into account is neither one of these guys, while we believe they are the elite of the elite, and I believe both of them are the elite of the elite, we haven't really seen them tested against like that elite opposition. We were going to get to see Shavkat versus Bilal Muhammad. I forgot the name for a second there. And we were supposed to see Ian Garry versus Buckley, which really didn't make sense, but that's because Colby was running for his life. So I really think in no matter who wins this fight, people are going to be calling the other a fraud. If Garry beats Shavkat, they're going to say, oh, Shavkat exposed, Shavkat fraud checked. I just think, if it's an ugly fight, yeah, Shavkat's going to find a way to win. But whether it be decision, TKO, or submission, I could see Shavkat winning. I could see Garry winning any way except submission. I could see him kind of dancing around the outside, sticking and moving, and winning a decision. I could see him knocking out Shavkat. I flirted with the idea of picking Garry by 3rd or 4th round TKO, and I could see that happening. Garry has excellent kicks. He's going to be chopping that lead leg of Shavkat that he's super heavy on rushing in. Garry has a high fight IQ. That's why he fought MVP the way he did. That's why he fought Jeff Neal the way he did, because Jeff Neal has good power. Shavkat is just a savage he kind of wanders into danger and potentially leaves himself open to be countered. And I think Garry's just crisper on the feet. And also, I think Shavkat, he's going to come in knowing that he got the better of Garry in training, because they used to train both at Killcliff. And I think that's an advantage for Garry, actually, because Shavkat's going to come in overconfident. Gary's going to know, okay, he used to get the better of me. That's got to play in the back of his mind. He's got to go out there and be perfect. And I think Garry is going to come into this fight. I think he's going to stick and move. I think he's going to use his lateral movement, and I think he's going to counter Shavkat well. And I think unless Shavkat can find those takedowns, find those grappling sequences, find that clinch. Also, if you find Shavkat clinching early and often, it's going to be a bad night for Garry, because Shavkat has nasty knees to the body in the clinch. And even when he enters into the clinch, he always throws a knee. But I think Gary's going to be sticking and moving, going to be using the full-size cage, which, sometimes at the Apex we have the smaller cage. He's going to be using the full-size cage to just move out of Shavkat's way. And it's going to be a masterclass performance from Garry. I actually don't think it's going to be a masterclass. I think it's going to be a highly competitive fight. But I think Gary's going to be landing the better shots. I think he's a much more polished striker. And unless Shavkat really imposes his will with the clinching and takedown ability, I think Gary's going to outstrike him. So I'm picking Garry to get it done. I'm going to say he gets it done via decision. I could also see a 4th or 5th round TKO, head kick KO for Ian Machado Garry. I cannot wait for this fight. And I know I joked about, people are going to say, Joey, you're biased. That's why you're picking Garry. At the end of the day, this fight, I believe, is a 50-50 fight. I think Shavkat can win. I think Garry can win. I think people are vastly underestimating Garry. But what it comes down to for me, I'm watching Jeff Neal piece up Shavkat on the feet. And I know that's a bit of an exaggeration, but you get my point. I'm watching him struggle to take down Wonderboy Thompson. I think Gary's a much better grappler than old Wonderboy Thompson. And while you can say, oh, well, Garry didn't look that great against MVP, MVP is one of the trickiest strikers in the division. And he dealt with him on the feet, and he only got touched a couple times, and he was able to out-grapple him. And I think Gary's past grappling, plus he was training with Charles Oliveira for a while. Now he's in Thailand training, with Muay Thai guys. I think that's very, very smart in preparation for a guy like Shavkat. Plus, Shavkat was training to be offensively grappled by Bilal, where Garry was training against, preparing to fight a guy like Buckley, who mixes it all together, and Buckley was most likely going to try to grapple Garry as well. So I think Garry, for being short notice, I think Garry is in a little bit better situation to get it done against Shavkat. So people are going to call me crazy, but people laughed at me when I said Bilal's going to dominate Leon Edwards, and Leon and his coaches are going to make a bunch of excuses afterwards. And mid-fight, his coach is going to be like, don't let him booty you, son. Ian Machado Garry will beat Shavkat Rakhmonov on Saturday night at UFC 310. He's going to dance around the cage, stick and move, land good counters, even rock Shavkat Rakhmonov. He's going to have some moments. He's going to have some moments of adversity, because Shavkat is a savage, coming together with standing elbows. I think it was against Jeff Neal. He was just slamming standing elbows on the feet and knees to the body. But I think Garry will get through those tough moments, similar to how he did against Kenan Song, where he got dropped and recovered. And I think he's going to survive, and I think he's going to keep putting it on Shavkat on the feet with counter shots, disengaging out of the clinch, similar to how Jeff Neal did. And I think he wins the fight primarily standing, even maybe finding a late finish. So I'm picking Ian Machado Garry. I'm going to say 48-47 decision win for Ian Machado Garry. I even see maybe a 49-45. I see Shavkat getting like 1 round. Maybe 2. Okay, it's gonna be a competitive fight. That's what I'm trying to say. But I'm picking Garry to get it done. Next fight on the card, we have Alexandre Pantoja versus Kai Asakura for the flyweight title. So we have 2 5-round fights, top of the card, 1 non-title. Listen, Kai Asakura coming to the UFC, getting a title shot in his debut. Does he get it done? Pantoja's due to lose. I talk about it all the time. It's the laws of averages. Somebody's, when you're a champion for a long time, it's like that. Boom. Next thing you know, you lose. Next thing you know, you're on the downturn. And we're like, how the hell did this happen? Look at Volkanovski. Think about the perception right after the first fight with Islam Makhachev. Pantoja's due to lose, man. He's on this crazy streak. He's coming off the win over Steve Erceg, which, some people thought were controversial. Before that, beat Brandon Royval. That was kind of a competitive fight. Before that, split decision win over Brandon Moreno, where he won the title. Kai Asakura, 2-fight winning streak. His last loss against a guy whose name I cannot pronounce, where he got out-grappled. But I believe that was the night where he fought twice in one night. But listen, Kai Asakura, he was the rising champion. He fought, his last fight was against Juan Archuleta, where he won with a knee to the body. Juan Archuleta is a good bantamweight. So he was fighting bigger guys. I think Ryzen also, their flyweight division is 135, if I'm not mistaken, even though that was a cross-promotion fight, if I'm not mistaken. Listen, I don't think Kai Asakura's striking is like, oh my God, it's unbelievable. He's definitely going to chin Pantoja. Pantoja's taken a lot of damage. He's due to get chinned, but I don't think it's going to be against Kai Asakura. I think it's going to be against a guy who can grapple a little bit better. I think Kai Asakura, looking at some of his previous fights, he's getting taken down, and also he's fighting in the ring primarily. I don't know if he's ever even fought in the cage. I didn't go back and look that far. I only watched like 5 of his fights. But the cage grappling of Pantoja is going to be a factor in this fight. He's going to push Kai Asakura up against the fence. He's going to be able to drag him down. He's going to be able to duck under an arm, get to the back, up against the fence, maybe jump on his back. And also, Pantoja has good striking. People don't give him enough credit for his striking. Pantoja is going to go out there, create chaos, eventually find the back of Kai Asakura and find a submission. That's generally what I think is going to happen. Because Pantoja's a savage. He has so many submissions. I believe he has 10 of his 28 wins are via submission. I think 8. He has 8 by KO. So he's finishing a lot of fights. He's only 34. He's not 35 yet. So it's not like he's got the 35 curse working against him. And he's beating guys that are super well-rounded. I mean, Steve Erceg's great on the feet. I know he got KO'd by Kara France, but still, he's good on the feet. Brandon Royval's excellent on the feet, out-grappled him. Brandon Moreno, great on the feet, great boxing, out-grappled him. Alex Perez, good on the feet, out-grappled him. Listen, I think that Kai Asakura, they just basically needed a fresh contender. They're hoping that the Japanese guy wins so they can kind of promote the flyweight division in Japan. I think they were hoping... Why can I not remember his name off the top of my head right now? Taishiro Taira. They were hoping that he was going to beat Brandon Royval, and then they were going to have potentially Kai Asakura versus Taishiro Taira in Japan. But I don't think either one of these guys are going to win. I think Pantoja, even if the fight is primarily standing, Pantoja is a savage on the feet. He has dynamic attack. I mean, he does leave himself open, but he's got a granite chin. I mean, who's even putting him down? Meanwhile, Asakura's getting out-grappled not that many fights ago. He has a loss against Manel Kopp. That was a while ago, so it really doesn't mean a whole lot. And I think he's fighting lesser opposition. I don't think Juan Archuleta beats Alexandre Pantoja. I don't think he does. So I think Pantoja just leaps and bounds better in the grappling, leaps and bounds better with his jiu-jitsu, and I think he can strike with him. Again, it's not like Kai Asakura is like, an Alex Pereira phenom striker with decent grappling coming into the UFC. He has good striking. And I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, maybe he's going to get DQ'd because he used to throw in knees to a downed opponent, soccer kicks and stuff like that in Ryzen. Maybe that happens because Pantoja does shoot some sloppy takedowns sometimes just in a hope to create chaos and create back exposure and jump on the back. But I think one way or another, Pantoja finds a sub in this fight. I could even see him finding a KO. Pantoja has good power. He has good power. And Asakura gets a little bit careless sometimes. He has good kicks. He has good hands. He is fast. And I think Pantoja, his kind of clock is ticking for him to get KO, but I don't think this is the fight that he loses. I think Pantoja goes in there, creates chaos, eventually finds some grappling position, and finds a submission. I'm going to pick Alexandre Pantoja. I'm going to say second round rear naked choke. I could even see him getting it done in the first round. I think he's going to be grappling early and often. I think Pantoja is going to go out there and fight like he did against Alex Perez, where he just tries to make it so chaotic that eventually he ends up in a grappling position because his opponent slips or he backs him up to the fence and, whatever scramble that Pantoja has to create to find that grappling, he will, whether it's the clinch, whether it's a trip, whether it's a slip, whether it's an overextension on a strike, whether he counters Asakura and hurts him and drops him, and then maybe Asakura scrambling back to his feet and Pantoja just snatches up his back. I see Pantoja getting it done in the grappling. I think he's the far superior grappler. I think he has the way better jiu-jitsu. And I see Pantoja finding a submission early in this fight, whether it's first or second round. I see Pantoja finding the sub and defending his flyweight title. Funny enough, I actually think Makhachev could beat Pantoja, but they cut Makhachev, and fans cheered it on for whatever reason. So I'm picking Alexandre Pantoja, second round rear naked choke. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I'm going with Ian Machado Garry. We already talked about it in the co-main event. I know a lot of people are going to think that's insane, but they thought I was insane when I picked Bilal Muhammad to run through Leon Edwards. So just remember that. Maybe I'm going to be wrong on this one. I think this is a much closer fight, going back to the co-main event, the people's main event. I think it's a much closer fight than that Bilal Leon on paper, in my opinion. but I think Ian Machado Garry has the tools to get it done. I don't think he gets enough credit. I think he beats Shavkat, and I think people will be saying, Shavkat's a fraud, which he's not. Shavkat got fraud checked. He got exposed. I just think Gary's really clean on the feet, and I think if he can keep it standing, he outstrikes Shavkat Rakhmonov and gets it done and earns himself a title shot at UFC 310. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and thank you so much for watching.